Hello there, guys, and welcome back to my channel for this second Premier League preview of the season, as well as, of course, talking all the latest Chelsea transfer news. We are, as you can see, already joined by Bertram. Mo should also be joining us very, very soon. I know, and I'm sure a lot of you are currently still watching the United Spurs game. United Spurs. In my head, I wanted to start with Tottenham, and then anyway, here we are. Currently, Spurs 1-0 up, which make of that what you will. I do always forget that it's much better to do previews Fridays because on Saturdays, just everyone's watching Premier League, which is understandable. But also, can we quickly just talk about how mental the schedule today was? There was no early kickoff, but there's an 8 o'clock kickoff tonight. I've never seen that on a Saturday in England. I'm not sure what's happening there. But also, well, yesterday's evening game apparently wasn't televised in the UK. I'm just baffled by the UK, how they do TV rights for the Premier League. Like, you pay so much money in the UK to watch old Premier League games, and then you can only watch half of them anyway. But hey, it is what it is. Romeo Lavia is finally a blue. I know it was announced yesterday, but I didn't have time to stream yesterday, so here we are. So Romeo Lavia is a blue. We'll talk in more depth about that in just a second. Plenty of other transfer news. We've bid for a potential number 2 goalkeeper. Exactly what I told you all. Once Kepa left, we wouldn't sign someone that really competes with Sanchez. We would sign a clear number 2. So here we are with a much worse goalkeeping department than we had last season. Brilliant. Amazing. But yeah, a few other bits and bobs to discuss. Could we be challenging Man City for Jeremy Doku after losing out on Michael Olise? Who knows? Obviously, plenty of targets from Lyon and stuff that I touched on with Euro Expert the other day. If you haven't checked out that stream, please do. It's, of course, on the channel. But Bertram, I'll get to you. West Ham away tomorrow. A good start against Liverpool last week. In the grand scheme of things, a fairly good performance. Didn't lose. Could have won, but didn't. Can Poch get his first competitive win as Chelsea manager tomorrow?
Well, thank you for having me on. Yeah, I'm very excited for tomorrow. I think, being Chelsea fans, we've been drained almost for good football since the first half of Tuchel's second season, almost, when we were up and about, and then kind of tailed off, and we all know how it went last season, which was terrible. So yeah, I'm excited for tomorrow. I think it was a very positive debut for most of the players and Poch himself against Liverpool. It was nice to see us actually play football again for once. But I think it's going to be interesting. We started off with Liverpool at home, a game which the fans were up for. You could almost feel the energy. Going into the players, even from my TV, you could feel Stamford Bridge was popping as it usually is. So I think tomorrow's going to be a real test. We're going to play a team, that has some confidence in itself. Even though they drew against Bournemouth, coming off the season they had last season, where even though they weren't good in the Prem, they still managed to win a European trophy. So I think it's going to be important. We're going to a hostile atmosphere, and if our players can turn up there, you never know what it can end up being. So I think we deserve justice from last season when, the most baffling handball decision I might have ever seen with that Souček save at the end. So I think hopefully tomorrow,
as Mr. Potter would say,
it is what it is. The boys, they give everything that day. So I think, all jokes aside, hopefully tomorrow we get to see the midfield that we've all been dreaming for, the Enzo Caicedo, even Lavia coming in perhaps. So I think we should all just enjoy the fact that, at least for the next couple of hours, we can slightly dream, maybe of a title charge. I know that's very, optimistic, but watching the United Spurs game, I think top 4 can be a chance. We should be able to get it. So hopefully tomorrow we're debuting the second kit. Caicedo's coming in, and hope we can get 3 points at the London Stadium, which hasn't been easy for us in the past. But I do believe that tomorrow we'll hopefully get it.
That is a very good point, actually. We haven't had the best record away at West Ham over the last few years. That is a good point. And also, Adash, thank you. I misspelled Caicedo's name in the title. So thank you, Adash, for telling me that, because I would probably not have realized. So cheers for that. But yeah, here we are with the proper name in the title now. I'm looking forward to it. Like, I've kind of, especially since the Caicedo announcement, I've been so looking forward to this next game. Obviously, after that, we got the Reece injury, so that made me a little less excited. But still, I'm still buzzing for it. Obviously, after the last game, I'm looking forward to it. I mean, you touched on it there, Bertram. Spurs United. I haven't been able to watch the game because I've had other things to do just before this stream. But I've gathered from a group chat that it's not particularly been a great game. It's been a bit mental in terms of penalties that United didn't get, and Spurs hitting the post twice in 10 seconds and all sorts of things. And
goalkeepers being very good as well. Both keepers.
Their new goalie.
Vicario, very good. Crucial saves. Onana as well. Every day that we haven't signed him, it looks it's baffling.
Yeah, let's see if Sanchez concedes another goal that, in my opinion, he could do better. And I know not everyone agreed on that last week. But yeah, I already saw a few certain Chelsea fans saying, oh, Kepa conceded 3 minutes into his debut. Well, actually, he did make his debut, agenda merchants. But anyway, yeah, let's just talk about Romeo Lavia, shall we? Do I have an adequate thing to bring up? No, I don't yet, which is unfortunate. So I will just get that ready in the meantime. And I'll ask you, Bertram, obviously Caicedo was arguably not arguably, was the bigger signing, more money, bigger name in terms of having already achieved more and, proven a bit more. Also didn't get relegated. But Romeo Lavia is still an exciting signing. Now, there is a debate to be had, and I still kind of stand by this. Was it really necessary? Because he's kind of so good and so talented and so expensive that you're like, not starting him regularly is almost a bit of a waste. But if you do start all three at LFC midfield, who's scoring the goals? So that if you play a three-man midfield and none of them are a particular goal threat, that's not ideal for a three-man midfield. So that's why you would rather have two of them in a pivot and then a number 10 in front of them, in my opinion. But still, looking at Lavia individually, he's still an absolute wonderful player and a brilliant, brilliant talent who I'm looking forward to seeing. I'm very intrigued how Poch is going to split up the minutes. But in general, I'm excited by the signing. What about you, mate?
I'm very excited. I think we all deserve to. I think we need to praise Liverpool. If they hadn't gone in for Caicedo and Lavia, we would have never bought them, according to Graham Souness. So thank you to Liverpool for pointing out Lavia's great talent and us signing him on the back of that. No, I think that was a stupid comment made by him, but I'm very excited by Lavia signing. I think it might seem unnecessary to people, outside of Chelsea, but when you kind of deep it, I think it makes sense. I think having, a broad midfield for the next couple of seasons, it makes sense. I think even though you can look at Caicedo and Enzo and see, okay, that's our starting pair, you never know. We just saw Reece James, even though he is quite injury prone. You saw Reece James, he's going to get injured. Enzo, Caicedo, we have them for 10 years perhaps. So there's bound to be an injury. Lavia himself as well, probably bound to get an injury. So I think having a lot of choices in the midfield is going to help us. I think, perhaps you touched upon before that the goal threat, might be, it might be different. I think we could perhaps see attacking output as we've seen the last couple of seasons from our fullbacks. Malo Gusto, who's been very good offensively, very good crosses. Ben Chilwell as well. His stats speak for themselves. So I think if we have a midfield of those three, we both have, some defense. Lavia and Caicedo, who are very good defenders first and foremost, but they can also, drive the ball up. Caicedo has a good pass on him as well. Enzo, he speaks for himself. So even though we play a 4-back with those three in midfield, I think their defensive presence might allow our fullbacks to join the attack. We have 3 attackers up, Mudryk, Madueke, for example, Jackson as well over the top. So I think it's going to be very interesting. And I think the thing about, the signings we've made is that, many people are going to say, okay, look, yeah, they have so many midfielders. You look at it. Perhaps you're right. We have Enzo, Lavia, Caicedo. We still have Gallagher on the books. Cardi Chukwuemeka as well. Lewis Hall before we sold him. And you look, okay, how can we, perhaps 2 positions? How do we have 5 players? Well, if you deep it, next season, when we're perhaps going to play, Champions League, we're going to have to be in, 5 competitions, adding with the new Club World Cup as well. Plus the fact that, games now are not 90 minutes. They're 100 minutes or 110 minutes. So I think having a bigger squad, I think the next couple of seasons, we're going to see the biggest squads, the league has ever seen, because there are so many minutes to go around. We even have the Euros this summer. So I see the point that people say, okay, why do you have 5 players to fit in 2 positions? But I think we're going to start seeing, bigger squads, much more rotation. And I'm very excited to see Lavia come in. The physical presence as well, very big guy. He's, a 6 with benefits, you could almost say. So I think it's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, isn't it? Because especially the squad kind of talk that you touched on. Because Poch in every press conference keeps going on about how he basically doesn't want to have too big of a squad, wants 22, 23 players, including goalkeepers, which I think it's not a lot. But by the way, also Tottenham 2-0 against United now with a Martinez own goal, according to FOTMob here. I'm not sure. Yeah, it seems like it was, which is rather funny, I would say. Maybe I have slightly overestimated Man United this season and slightly underestimated Tottenham. But at the same time, the season's long. When you look at only like a 1 or 2 game picture of us last season, well, if you took a look at the Milan and Wolves game under Potter, well, you'd think we're the best team in the whole fucking world. But, you know, when you look at a few other games under Potter or Lampard, then we look like literally the worst team this country has ever seen. Onana with the largest howler this season. Is it? Don't I love to see that? Absolutely brilliant news. I haven't seen it yet, but we will judge that later. But yeah, on Lavia, I can really only echo most of the things that Bertram has said. Mo will join us once the game is finished because he told me that most of the people in his flat are watching the current game in his room. So understandable that he will only join us after. Makes sense. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Now, I see what you're saying in terms of having 5 midfielders, 3 positions. For now, I think that's no problem. I think it could be a problem once Nkunku comes back because that obviously changes things. We might see a 4-3-3 for a little while now. Like I say, we touch on the goal situation, but we have that goal situation regardless what formation we play. Let's be honest now. It's not like we have a 10 currently that are so guaranteed to score us goals, whether that's Chukwuemeka or I guess Gallagher, if he all of a sudden plays there again now that we have Caicedo and Lavia. Huge deflection, so apparently wasn't a howler. All right then. But the agendas must run. There you go. But yeah, I mean, do you want to see them line up as a 3, or would you rather try to, well, start with always 2 of them and then have the other one come in as a game, as most games goes on? And then most of the time you would assume that to be Enzo and Caicedo with Lavia coming on. But then do you want to take either Enzo or Caicedo off unless they're having a bad game? You don't really, do you? So as much as it's a good problem to have, is it a problem that we had to have?
Well, I think in a sense we would have to because, you know, you also want these players to be pushed, you know, even though Enzo and Caicedo, they're very good. I think, you know, you always need to keep them pushing so they don't, you know, rest on their laurels too much. I think it is, in a sense, a good problem to have as well. Not having to, you know, a bad problem would be having to play a bad player in that position. So in that sense, it would be good to have 2 main starters. And, you know, we might have that. But I think I would like to see us some games try a flat 3 because I think our midfield, I just want to see the LFC midfield play, if I'm honest with you. But I think it could also add something defensively, as I talked on before. You know, you might be able to put Enzo up and see him play, you know, maybe as a 10, but deeper, you know, as a deep lying playmaker where he's, you know, free from his defensive duties by having these 2 next to him, you know, with their defensive output. So I think maybe tomorrow, seeing as we've just signed Lavia yesterday, it might not be time for him to start. So I think tomorrow I'd continue with the double pivot, also because, you know, I want to see how it turns out. But I think it's a good thing for us, and also to have the tactical flexibility to be able to line up tomorrow. You know, we would love to know. I think Sam will tell us before the game, you know, whether we're going to start off with a 4-3-3 or perhaps, you know, go with the 3 back again. I hope not, but, you know, we could do, or a 4-2-3-1. So I think it gives us this tactical versatility to be able to play all 3 if Poch deems it necessary. But I think, you know, for tomorrow, I would stick with just a double pivot. But I think having Lavia, generally, I think for the bigger games, you might be able to play him and Caicedo as well, depending on how defensive you want to be. You're unmuted.
Thank you. We have a question here by Adu who says, who's the better CM, Caicedo or Lavia? Because I was going to ask you the question, if we did play a 4-3-3 and you'd assume Enzo is one of the attackers, one of the number 8s, who would you play as the 6? Because statistically, Lavia is probably more of a clear DM, even though he has obviously ball carrying and dribbling abilities that are wonderful. But even though he's bigger physically than Caicedo is in terms of height, his aerial stats are actually worse than even Enzo's. I'm not really
Seriously?
sure. Oh yeah, I didn't necessarily watch Southampton much at all last season, so I couldn't necessarily tell you if that is, you know, anything down to them or whatever. But Caicedo's aerial numbers are, one, still not incredible because he's 5'11", so you wouldn't expect them to be incredible. Are better, so I'm really not sure if that influences anything about who should be the 6. But I'm not sure how much necessarily you've watched of both of them to make a full judgment on that yet. But still, as of today, as of right now, who do you think you'd put in that position? Like as the deeper one, as the real DM?
Yeah, I think it is I think it's an advantage for us as they're not similar players, but they're both defensive, but can also contribute, offensively. Lavia more by, driving the ball up, and Caicedo more by passing it up. I think it's an advantage for us. They can alternate through it as well. Lavia has experience playing in a pivot. Last season he did against us when they beat us. They beat us twice actually. When they beat us the first game when he was very good. I think it depends. I think it might be an advantage for us just to let them alternate. I think if we play with a flat three, perhaps it would depend on which side they're attacking. I think from what I've seen with Caicedo, he almost like pushes up so they have like different press markers. So I think for me personally, I would almost have Lavia positioned, centrally with his size as well, to be able to almost scoop up, and then Caicedo almost kind of freely being able to walk around and tackle because his tackling is so impressive. Sometimes even though he kind of like bends his foot to tackle in. So I think purely from a positional standpoint, I would perhaps have Lavia further back. And then, he's able to drive the ball up, and then having Enzo and Caicedo being able to pass, them two being a bit further forward, I think is how I would see it.
Fair dues. See, there you go. I did look while you were talking there, bring up the stat. As you can see, these are the aerial duels. Blue is Caicedo, red is Lavia, the turquoise, green, whatever, is Fernandez. So there you can see, even Fernandez is better than Lavia in the air, which is kind of baffling, if I'm being perfectly honest. Not really sure how that even happens, but yeah, judging by that, either Lavia just needs to work on it, which obviously plays a big part in what happens with these players, because Lavia is 19, even Caicedo is only 21. These guys are not the finished product. These guys will most certainly get better. But yeah, it is definitely interesting. Apparently, Mason Mount has been booed off, which is rather funny. I won't even lie. Like I do try to, for both Kai and Mount, and the same will go for Lewis Hall as well, to kind of stay out of like, oh, haha, they're doing bad, because especially in case of Mount and Kai, I know people like don't care, but they want us the Champions League. Like, I know people are weirdly like, no, the defense want us the Champions League. Well, no. The defense kept us a clean sheet in the Champions League final, but then we would have gone to penalties and God knows what happens then, right? Someone
sub Kepan.
Exactly, but someone needed to score that goal, and Mount assisted it, haven't scored it. So I'm not going to sit here and slag them off. That I don't do that to people that won the Champions League final for us. But it's still funny that it's getting pooed.
But we do hope they flop, if we're honest with ourselves. Yeah, we can respect what they did, but it does make it better in a sense.
Exactly. See, I couldn't have put it any better, really. But there you go. Mo is still not here, with this game taking a little while longer. So I will just keep it going for the time being. And we will talk about the goalie situation. I've mentioned it a few times before. People might remember. Bertrand does play as a goalkeeper himself. Chelsea have made an opening bid for Petrovic. I forget his first name. Does it say that? Djordje Petrovic. Sources believe a deal could get done for £11.8 million. But then Fabrizio and Jacob Steinberg said £15 million was bid. The American side of the thing said $15 million was bid. I think it's more likely to be $50 million, and some people were getting caught up in currencies personally. But who knows? But what do you make of that now? Now, obviously, I have never seen the guy play ever in my life. I have no idea if he's good. I know he's 23. We just signed Lavia at 19 for 60 million. He's 23. Why is he at nowhere better than the MLS? But obviously, first of all, goalies are a bit better. As goalies, it's maybe a bit more difficult to branch out as well, because every team only has one or two goalies. So it's a bit more difficult to maybe find a spot, especially if you are talented and don't necessarily want to be backup and not really play all season, which is now going to do with us. But I'm not expecting you to have ever heard of him either. But what do you make of going for such a clear number 2 goalie? Even if he's apparently, according to some, the best goalie in the MLS, it's still the MLS. So let's not, he's tall, I guess. That's the best thing. I don't even know if he's good with his feet or not. But what do you make of this? And what do you make of signing such a clear number 2 after letting Kepa go, and essentially going from Kepa and Mendy to Sanchez and potentially Petrovic, which, as the number 1 may not have changed much in level, but in terms of overall goalkeeping department ability, has certainly taken a significant downturn, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, you're right. I can't claim to have watched Petrovic. So, from a pure, if this was just a blank goalkeeper, I would say it's always tough to judge a goalkeeper based on the club they play for. You could look at, when we signed Mendy, he played for Rennes, a decent club in France. When we signed,
they still came third that season. We signed.
They did come they did come third. But the same with Petr Cech when they finished a bit lower down. Yeah. Ramsdale, he got a lot of critique. He still does, but has turned out to be a very good goalkeeper for Arsenal. He's been relegated twice. Came from Sheffield United, so it's always tough seeing where people came from having signed them. It's not always that easy, and goalkeepers, they take to it differently. I think if you gave me the choice before the season on having Kepa and Mendy as our two goalkeepers and having Robert Sanchez and Petrovic, I'd almost choose the latter, because confidence is such a huge thing for goalkeepers. And I think Mendy was at a point where it was gone. Even one game he played, I forget I think, was it against Brentford perhaps? He was terrible. And Kepa, even though he had a resurgence,
I think
they were both. That might have been Forest. Yeah, you're right. Perhaps Kepa played the Brentford game then. But confidence is such a big thing for a goalkeeper. And I think even though Mendy won us the Champions League and Kepa won us the Europa League, undoubtedly, whenever they see Stamford Bridge, they're going to feel the nerves. Kepa's almost always going to see that free kick from Ziyech coming in and hitting him in the face. So having two goalkeepers with a clean slate, I think, always makes a difference. The thing is, watching the United game now, even though they're 2-0 down, I haven't seen the other goal. I would almost, in a sense, for next season, I want an older, experienced, clear number one. Because I think this season, even though as optimistic as we might be, probably not going to challenge for, pretty much anything, maybe a cup. But the league, I think, might be a step too far, or it is going to be a step too far. So it doesn't really make that much of a difference having, Sanchez, who might end up being the number 2 goalkeeper next season. But I think from next season, having a good goalkeeper not only will save you points in terms of...
Can I interrupt you with a question there? Do you see that as likely? Like I said, I agree with you. Obviously, that's what I'd want too. That's what probably most fans would want. But do you see that as likely that Chelsea take that step? I mean, obviously, a lot of it will depend.
Sign a massive goalie next season?
Yeah, exactly. Like, obviously, a lot of it will depend on Sanchez. If Sanchez has a good season, I really don't see us splashing big on a goalie. Now, if he has a bad season, that may well happen. But obviously we signed Sanchez with the idea to make him competition for Kepa. Yeah, there was reports that we see him as good enough to be number 1 long term, but people need to pay attention. They can't when they don't like a story say this is a club brief, and then when they do like it, not talk about club briefs at all. That is clearly a club brief. Like let's not lie to ourselves. Why would media randomly talk about, oh yeah, the club think he can be number 1 long term? I'm not saying they don't believe it, but it's been put into the media by the club, and I absolutely guarantee that part. Because what I wanted to start with, Sanchez was bought to be competition for Kepa. Sanchez wasn't, when we signed him, wasn't told he'd be number 1, but he also wasn't told he'd be number 2. He was told he would compete. So if we then next year, and we just signed him on a 7-year contract, if we then in a year's time go by, let's just, for example, use Maignan and buy him for 60 million or whatever, and then have this clear number 1. Well, what do you think is going to happen to Sanchez? Remember last time a club made him number 2 goalkeeper? He kicked off so much they had to make him number 3. Like, do you know what I mean?
I think it's very interesting the way that they've gone about it because, we're giving him this long contract, and it's a goalkeeper that's not known to be, as you said, very good at handling the fact that he's not going to be number 1. I think we have signed him. I think the club owe him, in a sense, the trust, and they owe him to go out and say, okay, he's going to be our number 1. He might not be, but I think, again, for confidence, I think I saw the Southampton manager. He was out in the media. I think that the fans were able to ask questions in a forum, and he really backed their young goalkeeper, Gavin Bazunu. So I think we have him now. We're going to, back him up. And you know what? He might end up not being good enough. You never know. He might also end up being very good, but we owe it to him to find out. I think
that's fair.
I think it all depends on the performance levels. Robert Sanchez, from what I've seen of him at Brighton, I was watching, just to get the hate up for Brighton again, I was watching the game we played against them last season where we got battered 4-1. And even though we got battered, Robert Sanchez played a great game, made some great saves. So I think there is a good goalkeeper there. I think in my head, that if the club can see we're in a position in where we're 1 or 2 world-class players away from challenging, I think a goalkeeper would be one of those. It also gives confidence to the defense, which in turn, gives the team confidence having a good goalkeeper. It's not only having shots, saving shots. So I think it's a very interesting strategy from us going to buy Petrovic, a clear, not number 2, but someone maybe similar in level, instead of, perhaps waiting or giving one of the young goalkeepers a chance in the cups, and even if we sign Petrovic, we're going to have Gaga next season as well. So it's very difficult to find out. But I think for me personally, if we buy Petrovic, some people say he's quite good. You never know. He could be. Personally, I would wait till next season and buy a real number 1, depending on if Robert Sanchez is good enough. But I think for this season, we probably do need a number 2, and I think that will cement us for next season as well in terms of buying a new goalkeeper. But I think we do owe it to Robert Sanchez to just try him out at least.
Yeah, no, I hear that as well, and I think people sometimes slightly, Shubham, it's the same @ on Instagram. You can message me there as well. I think people slightly misunderstand, I guess. When I say Sanchez to me is the same level as Kepa, roughly, that to me, and I am one of the few, that to me doesn't mean he is absolutely god-awful. That to me means he's a decent goalie, but because I'm one of the few people that think Kepa is a decent goalie. I don't think Sanchez is bad. I think Sanchez will be fine for us, but I just don't think he's a step up from Kepa, so I don't see the point in the whole switch, I guess. I do see your point, Bertram, though, that he doesn't have the pre-existing stigmas around him, whether that's from the media or the fans, but also in his own mind. I absolutely see that as a valid point. But it's still an interesting one. Mo, first of all, thank you for joining. We appreciate it very much. We have spoken about Lavia already. If you want to touch on that, please do, of course. But we have moved on to Chelsea's opening bid for Jonde Petrovic from the MLS, from New England. And obviously, when the whole Kepa thing happened, I already had my complaints at the time about we're just going to sign a number 2 now. So that means rather than having Kepa and Sanchez, all of a sudden we have Sanchez and the number 2, which to me is a lot less good. But obviously, I don't know Petrovic. It could be a revelation, but I just don't think we sign a 23-year-old from the MLS to actually compete with Sanchez. Sanchez is the clear number 1, and Petrovic is going to be lucky if it is him, if he gets a cup game, in my opinion. I wouldn't even be too convinced if he gets a cup game. Maybe 1 or 2, but not more than that. I don't think it's going to be a situation of we have a cup goalkeeper that plays every cup game if we get far. I don't think it's going to be that. So, Mo, I'm not expecting you to have seen or heard anything about him, but what do you make of the general situation that, we went from Kepa and Sanchez, or from Mendy and Kepa, to now Sanchez, and the quite drastically stepped down from Sanchez number 2?
And first of all, it's a pleasure to be on, as always, and thank you so much for having me on, Lawrence. Apologies for being delayed. I had to watch the end of that Man United game. I could not believe what I was watching. And Bertram, it's a pleasure to finally get a face to the name, my friend, and it's a pleasure to be on a stream with you. And yeah, good evening, good afternoon, good morning to wherever you are in the chat. And I'm actually quite excited. I'll be very honest with you. I think there's certain things that when you look at this window that people don't want to look at the overall picture of the window. I think what we're starting to do is, things that are starting to finally go really well. We're starting to get, targets correct. The correct target, in terms of the profiles we've mentioned, and getting Caicedo over the line, getting Lavia, which I don't think many of us expected, but we also know we were in for Ugarte, and that's a play that we missed out on and early on in the window. But we've also had a major clear out. I don't know, but maybe the way I kind of look at things is I'm looking at this window as an overall window rather than as just individual things. And the reason why I say that is it's because I don't expect to obviously get everything correct in every position, because it's almost impossible when you look at the money that is being quoted for some of the players that we've targeted. I think this goalkeeper situation for me has always been a bit of it's a tough scenario, because when you really think about even as far back as to when we lost Courtois, Kepa was an out of nowhere deal. We had to activate a release clause, and it's the only way we could get him, and it had to be done as quickly as possible. And Chelsea kind of felt like a reactive team for the first time in that scenario, rather than a team that was being proactive in understanding they were going to lose Courtois and we're going to do the right thing. And ever since then, we've had to kind of play a bit of a catch-up situation here. And respect to Kepa, because I do think the first season under Sarri for me was very good. And then I think it's been really tough for him to kind of get that same type of form and build up on that. And there are aspects of his game that I generally do rate, and I think they are good. but there's certain things that he just gave me zero confidence when it comes to long shots, when it comes to placement shots. I've always felt very uneasy with Kepa being in goal. I also felt like sometimes he had that error in him in terms of making passes, but I think that comes with any ball-playing goalkeeper, so it's not something that's exclusive to Kepa. With this situation, when we signed Sanchez, for me, I'm quite happy with what I saw at Brighton to remain very hopeful. But I also do agree with you that in terms of the upgrade that we're looking for at Chelsea Football Club, this isn't necessarily the upwards jump or trajectory that we all would like to see. Hence why I can understand the disappointment and the frustration. But when you think about the over window and the business we've had to actually conduct, you can understand why the club has had to make a decision like this. As for this second keeper, I'll be very honest, I'm not going to be the type of guy to pretend and say I know anything about him. I know zero. But what I am going to refer to is the press conference that Pochettino did recently, and he spoke about the fact that the amount of money that player costs and what sort of, play that person is based on how much we spent isn't going to dictate if they're going to get game time. It's going to be all about the quality and the consistency they provide on the pitch, and they should be willing to compete for their position. There's no guaranteed places. I love when a manager says that. Why? Because I don't care if you've been signed for 100 million or if you've been signed for 30 million. If you're performing, I want you to be given the fair amount of chance. If you're not performing and you're not up to scratch, I need you to know that the club, as well as the fans, as well as the people that have invested that much in you, are expecting far better from you. And at Chelsea Football Club, when we make that type of big investment, there's high expectations. With that being said, I think this is one of those scenarios where I look at it and I say, you bite the bullet on the goalkeeper situation and see how things turn out with Sanchez. And if this guy becomes our second goalkeeper, he is our second goalkeeper. If he's there good enough to actually compete on a bigger level than just being a second goalkeeper, then so be it. May the best person win. At the end of the day, what we will judge them on is what they do on the pitch. And I'm hoping that things work out really well there, but I can understand why the club hasn't necessarily gone out big in terms of going for some of these bigger keepers, whether that's Mignon or whether that's the Portugal keeper, which Diego Costa, I think his name is. And those are the two keepers that, honestly speaking, that's the first two names that jumped at me when the window first started opening. But as our business started to become clear, you could clearly see that it wasn't going to be an easy scenario where we're going to be able to get all those signings across the board. So I feel quite at ease at the moment. I think we just definitely need that second goalkeeper. So if he comes through the door, I'm more than happy to support him. And if he can challenge for the first team spot to make sure that Sanchez is up to form and up to scratch, then so be it, man. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I obviously agree with what you're saying in terms of once Sanchez was signed and then the Kepa interest came up. Then we were in a situation where I agree with you. I understand that you would now sign a number two, a clear number two, rather than another goalkeeper that could potentially compete with Sanchez, because then then you'd spend another good bit of money on a goalkeeper that's of another similar level, but there's also not that many available in that both quality and budget, price category. So I understand it. The problem that I have, and that I don't think enough people are talking about, obviously, Courtois and Real Madrid, we couldn't have seen that coming because that interest only came up after Courtois' ACL. But Bayern Munich's interest, if we just did a better job at finding a club to give Kepa to, in my opinion, because Bayern Munich knew their goalkeeping situation 2 months before. They knew someone would leave, they knew Neuer was injured, and they knew they wanted a new goalkeeper. So if they were apparently interested in Kepa, then that says to me, we didn't do a good enough job at finding out, is there a club to take Kepa from us? And if we did that, and we would have found out about that sooner, then we could have just bought a better goalkeeper than Sanchez in the first place. Now, you're right, Mo. Once Sanchez was bought and then the interest from Real Madrid came up, then it was too late. Then we had to probably buy number two. Absolutely fair. But that still doesn't take away from the fact that we could have done a better job beforehand and now had a better goalkeeping situation than we do right now, because people love to forget. Now we're signing Petrovic. Okay, he's fairly young. We're probably going to be able to ship him off again if we need to, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But we still have Sanchez now. We have Kepa out on loan, he will come back. There is no way on earth Real Madrid buy him, because Courtois will be back. And it's not like he's an outfield player, so the ACL injury is less likely to impact his career and performances dramatically. He will be back April, May, whenever. He will come back. And then Kepa will be shipped back to us. And then we just have to hope he had a good season. Otherwise, we are still stuck on Kepa's 190k a week. But instead of having Sanchez and Kepa, we have Sanchez, Kepa, and Petrovic. and Slonina. Now, obviously, Slonina will go out on loan again. We're all aware of that. It will probably take him until he's 22, 23, 24, until he's a valid option to be a starting goalkeeper. I get that. But still, to me, as much as the club have done great work in the midfield, they've done great work on selling a lot of the players, or getting rid of a lot of the players, I should say, because we didn't sell. I mean, we sold a lot of them, but we also got rid of a lot of them for free. Like even Ziyech, he still is on the contract, and we're not even charging any money. Like, people say, "Oh, we've done so well on the clear out." No, we just essentially terminate the contract. But anyway, I think this goes a bit forgotten personally. That clearly Bayern Munich wanted Kepa, so why couldn't we have known that a month earlier before buying Sanchez? But hey, it is what it is now. Like Bertram said, like Mo said, let's give Sanchez the chance. Again, I want to reiterate, I'm not saying Sanchez is bad. I just don't think he's much better than Kepa. But I would have been okay with going into the season with Kepa. I would have been okay with that. So now I'm okay with going into the season with Sanchez. My only issue with it is Kepa, at least that was the old goalkeeper. So that isn't a new investment. The problem to me is Sanchez is a new investment and he's no better. So what was the point in the investment? That's my only question mark. Obviously, a lot less wages. I get that point. But yeah, I think it's enough.
Can I ask a question then? So did you have an issue when we signed Edouard Mendy then?
No.
So did you think he was an upgrade to Kepa when we signed him?
Well, I didn't really know what he was at the time. But I was like, all right, he seems to be a pretty good goalkeeper. Played for Rennes, who came third, had a really good season, had a very, quick rise from being unemployed to being a good goalkeeper. And we bought one for 20 million. But at the time, obviously, the situation was we couldn't, for the life of us, get rid of Kepa. And also, Kepa had a lot of years left on his contract. Now he has 2 years left. At the time, he had, 4 years left? How long ago did we sign Mendy? 3 years ago, maybe even. So then he would have had 5 years left on his contract. So that's a bit of a different situation where I'm like, okay, you can't get rid of Kepa. Let's get another goalie. And to me, Mendy, initially when we signed him, was to compete with Kepa. And Mendy just won that fight initially, and then by the end lost it again, and then Kepa was back in goal. So that is like a Sanchez-Kepa situation, which isn't ideal, but at least you have two good goalies competing and hopefully making each other better, rather than now having a good goalie and the number 2 goalie, which is less likely to make the current number 1 better.
Yeah, no, I hate that part. But I think for me, I kind of look at the situation quite similarly in terms of obviously the type of money that we've signed for both players, and also in terms of maybe the standard that they were looked at before that would have been probably around the same type of level, and we don't really know what they were going to be like. I think one thing with the Kepa situation is that if Pochettino is behind the scenes saying, hey, I'm happy to go ahead with Kepa, and the only thing that changed that situation up is Kepa's wanting to leave because of the opportunity that presented itself, that then changes the discussion into a different one. Because I don't necessarily... It felt like for me, like we were definitely going in with Kepa and Sanchez as our goalkeeper options. And then suddenly that changed within an instant. Hence why I understand the situation for what it is. It's more of a scenario that is much more about opportunity presenting itself rather than us wanting to do that from the beginning. And if we had thought, you know what, Pochettino is saying, I don't want Kepa, I think we would have probably done the behind the scenes work to get rid of him and probably found him a club of some sort. Because I'll be honest, there are some assets that we've gotten rid of who I think are definitely no better than Kepa, and Kepa is not a useless goalkeeper. Do you get what I mean? He just might not be fitting to what we're asking of him in the Premier League.
The problem is more his wages than anything else. I think that was the issue with getting rid of him.
Yeah.
Because obviously I think the club, at least under the new ownership, would have at times been willing to take a cut price, but he wanted to keep his wages, and other clubs weren't willing to match his wages. Now, I don't fully understand this comment. Lawrence is annoying me. I am annoying you. Because Pochettino said he wants to keep Kepa. I don't really understand. Maybe you've misworded what you're trying to say. But yeah, no, he did say that. And I also understand from Kepa's perspective. If I had Real Madrid coming for me, knowing, okay, Chelsea have just signed a goalie to compete with me, and I could also be Real Madrid number 1 for a season, and that maybe elevates my career in terms of I can show myself again on a different level in a different league ways, maybe a bit more comfortable, and that gives him a better chance to, have a better end of the career than what seemingly he was heading towards with how things were going at Chelsea. So from his perspective, I totally understand it. The one thing you could argue, Mo, is, yeah, we plan to go into the season with Kepa and Sanchez. We could have also said no to letting Kepa go. Now, I understand why they didn't, because of the wages, but I just don't think it's that simple as someone said here. We can just send him on loan.
But it's also Kepa, isn't it? it's also Kepa in it. If Kepa is saying, "I want to go, I want to take advantage of this opportunity," I do think the club is at that type of level now where we are not wanting to keep players that are not committed to us. Do you get what I mean? And I think if as soon as those words came out of his mouth, the club were going to facilitate for that to happen. At this point in time, I don't know if this is what the information is in terms of the wages. Is Real Madrid covering the whole wages? What are they doing?
I think so, but I can't be sure.
Okay.
I don't think it was ever reported, but that tells me that they are. Otherwise, it would have been reported, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I hear that.
We also don't know if there was a loan fee, let alone how high it was, if there was one. Patrick, you were trying to say, go on.
Yeah, I was just on the whole goalkeeping situation. I think, it's been, I think, Mo, you could probably tell us, but it seems, from the outside that in England it's become a whole discussion in the media, after David Raya signed for Arsenal. And I was reading Peter Schmeichel's quote, a fellow Danish goalkeeper who doesn't love those. And I agreed with this thinking. I think in a sense, being a goalkeeper is very different to being, perhaps a right back or a left back, where it might be beneficial for someone playing in the outfield to have someone always, breathing down their neck, pressuring them, because you always have actions to do. If you're a midfielder, there's always a tackle, there's always a ball, there's always a duel. But being a goalkeeper is very different. You're always waiting. In a sense, a goalkeeper needs to be most calm when, the striker's taking the shot, it doesn't really make sense in that sense, because you need your technique to be right. You need to not be rash. I think if you have two goalkeepers competing and, a goalkeeper, they always want to play. If you don't play, you're not going to get subbed in, are you? So you want to start. If you're always wanting to do extra things, if you always want to do, the extra pass or, come play in that extra cross, it's going to eventually end up with a mistake. I think the way City have done it, it makes much more sense, having a clear number one, a very good goalkeeper in Ederson, but having a competent number two as well in Ortega, which we've seen. So I think that's almost the way to go for it. If we're signing, Petkovic as, with the understanding that he's the clear number two, I think it could make sense. I think the way we need to look at it, though, is having a clear number one, because I don't think having competition in that area makes sense. It makes sense having two goalkeepers, but having a clear number one, both in terms of, presenting it to the media, no one is criticizing Pep when he starts Ederson over Ortega, but also having someone competent. I think that's the way we go for it, because otherwise it can be dangerous and it will lead up to mistakes.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that completely, which is why I wasn't initially particularly happy with getting Sanchez to compete with Kepa anyway.
Yeah, I hear that.
But I would just like someone better than Sanchez to be the number one, if that makes sense. I also in an idea wanted someone better than Kepa, but I knew, okay, Kepa was...
I agree with that as well.
Difficult to move on. So, okay, it is what it is. Let's see, maybe next year we can get rid of Kepa, only 1 year left in his contract, whatever, right? And then sign a proper number one. But instead what we did is we signed Sanchez, and now next year we might be stuck with 4 goalkeepers. And that's where my issues come from, essentially. But at the end of the day, let's just wait and see what happens, I guess. I guess as we are mostly, we were talking about Kepa, him having left, essentially, as much as it was about Petrovic, I guess we do also need to talk about the other outgoing, or one other outgoing, who is also alone, but alone with an obligation to buy, which... I'm still not fully sure, but seems to already count on our books now because it's an obligation. So therefore, you can already put it on your books now. Because if we couldn't, then this would be the stupidest thing I'd ever heard of. But if we can put it on the books now, then fair enough. But yeah, Lewis Hall out on loan. What do you make with an obligation? What do you make of that one? I'll start with you, Bertram. Unfortunate about that? So unfortunate or happy? I can't even talk anymore. Happy, sad? How do you feel about that one?
I, in a sense, almost knew this was going to happen. I think, even though I was so relieved and happy when he signed that 6+1 year extension, I think the loan to Crystal Palace made the world of sense. And I'm super, super sad to see him go. I think, genuinely, we are losing a top talent. I think it's almost clouded by the fact that, we've seen, all our favorite creators on Twitter call him, a generic guy, because Lewis Hall, who looks like this, if he was from Brazil, he'd almost be worth 80 mil. But I think I would almost have hoped we'd have a buyback clause instead of a sell on clause. And I think this whole thing is very weird, because I think if he had been playing in almost any other position than left back and midfielder, we would have done everything to keep him. If he had the quality he has as a striker, perhaps goalkeeper, center back. I think we would have done all we could to keep him. I think if you look at our left back depth, Maatsen, if we wanted to play him there, Chilwell, Cucurella, who seemingly is the reason that we can't shift him. And if you look at our midfield, arguably our strongest positions, those are the two places he wants to play. So in that sense, I think saying no to 35 million from a business perspective might be fair enough. But I can't look past the fact that when he played last season, he was genuinely so impressive. His passing, the fact that he didn't score almost, all those chances he had, I think he was super impressive. And being 18 as well, he's miles beyond where Reece James, Levi Colwill, all our favorite academy graduates
Ian Maatsen.
Exactly. Maatsen was very good last season, though, granted.
Yeah, but not at 18.
Not at 18. And I think there is a chance that he's going to really break through at Newcastle, which is why I would have wanted, a buyback clause instead. But I think it's sad. I also think we need to see, 35 million for an 18-year-old who, plays in the two positions where we're most well stocked. You need to look at it from that perspective. But I think it's unfortunate to see him go. I would have almost started him as left back, him and Chilwell perhaps. But I think that's the way we need to look at it, that this is just an unfortunate set of circumstances for us as Chelsea fans. But 35 million for an 18-year-old, you'd have to almost see that as a win.
Mo, how do you see it? What are your views on Lewis Hall move to Newcastle on loan with obligation to buy?
And I can't lie, I'm definitely shocked. It's not something I saw coming at all. And I think every Chelsea fan was pretty much on the same page in that regard. But I'll be honest in saying also that I'd kind of prepared myself for the type of window we were having, that there will be something that is a bit of a low blow for us that we're going to have to deal with. And this kind of feels like that. But then you add the circumstances that Bertrand pointed out, and I think I absolutely agree. Like the fact that if our circumstances were a little bit better, where we didn't have so many people at left back, where we didn't have a stacked midfield that we've just invested so heavily into, the situation could have been very different for the player. And I'm also about sometimes doing the best by the player. And if the player is looking at this situation, despite having signed that contract, that there is no path, and because let's be frankly honest, when he signed that deal, we didn't really fully complete the signings that we did in midfield just yet. And from what I understand, he ideally wants to see himself in midfield. So despite us playing him at left back and seeing how well talented he is and how well suited he is in that position, I generally thought, you know what, there's still a really good chance for him. But from once we signed the players that we did,
let's be honest though, he's got to play left back at Newcastle as well.
He is. And I think what's changing that situation is there's more of a chance of playing. Whereas with us, there's a lack of chance of playing. And even if we did send him out alone, what's not guaranteed is when he comes back, will the pathway be made for him? That all is all up in the air. And I think that's where the confusion for all of us, I think, is just obviously he signed a 6+ 1 year deal. Everyone expecting him to stay, everyone for him to go out alone. Suddenly, a week or two later, we're selling him, we are loaning him out with an obligation to buy, which pretty much to me means he's definitely going, because he's that talented. I rate him. Yeah, he's that talented. I can't see Newcastle United going back on any of this stuff anyways. But it's an obligation to buy.
Legally allowed to go back on it.
Then, yeah. It's weird because when the press conference happened with Eddie Howe, he didn't really mention anything about it being an obligation to buy. I mean, he might not know it. Well, yeah, that might also be the case. Who knows? But I rate the kid. I was very, very impressed with the little amount that we've given him game time on, and I was really looking forward to us investing a little bit more time in him. And it's unfortunate that the situation hasn't worked out. But I do wish him the best, because I do think it's been done in a manner that is actually quite good for everybody involved. Newcastle get a left back that they've been searching for. We obviously are in a situation where we have one player too many in that situation. We have the books that we have to make up for. That us getting 35 million, I'll be honest, for an 80-year-old, it's quite ridiculous amount of money to get. But I'm glad that we got it. And at this point in time, we also
nearly 60 for a 19-year-old.
We did, but I also feel like that's one of those players that I generally I rate very freaking highly. It's difficult. Yeah,
the only thing that I would like, or what I would like to add to it, and I've said this in our group chat, and I think I've said this on stream as well, and I don't know if it's true, but to me, this is the only explanation to how this has gone down. To me, the explanation is that Chalobah got injured at the beginning of this week. And then we realized, oh shit, Chalobah is out for a month. That means we can't sell him right now. We kind of planned to have roughly 30 million coming in for Chalobah. We plan to even the books with that 30 million, but now we can't sell him. So therefore, we need to sell someone else that is from the academy and gets us pure profit. Sure, you had Gallagher there, but for Gallagher, firstly, we want more. Also, until Caicedo and Lavia was done, we had to use him anyway. Also, Poch likes him. Well, he doesn't seem to be the biggest fan of Lewis Hall, at least not compared to the other options, because he barely used him in preseason. So I think what happened is Chalobah got injured, and that's when we went from loaning Lewis Hall to selling Lewis Hall. I think that's essentially what happened, because I understand that we don't have the space for him right now, but he just signed a 6+1 year contract. We are in control. It doesn't matter if he wanted a permanent move. We could just send him on loan. Like, he's 18 and he had a pre-agreement with Palace and he signed that 6+1 year deal. Yes, he may prefer to move permanently to Newcastle. Well, a lot of people prefer a lot of things that they can't do. It is what it is, right? So if we wanted to send him on loan to Palace, I'm sure we would have done that. But I think the reason why we in the end didn't is because of that Chalobah injury. Now, that is my logic. I don't know.
Could I present another? I agree with both most of the things both you, Mo, and Lawrence are saying. I think also in terms of the fact, I think there might be another factor. And that factor might be, our owners. We know they're American. In American sports, having relationships with the owners in between, it's very common. Trading in between clubs. I think it's not that common in England. We saw how much it was made that John Henry. Are probably, one of our main rivals. He was at the game. It seems, though, that, our owners, who, are American, have a very good relationship with Newcastle's owners. And I know they're Saudi, but they still have, Amanda Staveley, who is American, who's affiliated with it. And I think, in a sense, we kind of want to build a relationship with them. So it would work out like you said, Lawrence, where we've had, these 30 million that we expected to get in. Shit, we can't get them from Chalobah now. So we go to Newcastle, we offer them one of our best talents for, pretty decent price, but 30 million is still a lot. So I think the reason we're selling to them might as well be to get a relationship with Newcastle. So, we can sell players in between them as well. I think, does that make sense in a way? Because while we're giving them a very good player, they're also paying a lot of money. And we've also seen, the photos that have come in between or come in last season when all Newcastle's whole owner structure was at Stamford Bridge and pictured with Iqbali and Bowley as well. So I think it might have something to do with the relationship that our owners are trying to build with their owners, which could be favorable to us. You never know.
I mean, it may be the case. Absolutely. At the same time, they're rivals of us to fight for top four. So helping them out, I'm not sure how smart that is in general. I also think my next issue with it is I don't understand how we didn't manage to get more for Lewis Hall. I understand he's 18. I understand he's only played 9 games. But the reason he's played 9 games isn't because he wasn't good enough for more. The reason he didn't play more than 9 games was Potter and Lampard, because they should have played him more. And instead, Potter used him for a bit. Then the injured players came back, and then he just sent him back to under 21. So that was smart. And Lampard, when Chile got injured, instead of bringing Lewis Hall on, he brought Aspie on at left back. Do you know what I mean? So that's where the issues came from. It's a tough one. At the end of the day, it is what it is. I'm not going to lose sleep over this, but yeah, I agree with Oxelos. I mean, not the number, but Brighton, if they had the same player, they would have got so much more money. And I saw a tweet the other day somewhere. If Lewis Hall was Brazilian and had the same statistics and credentials to him as Lewis Hall does, we would have gone out and paid 60 million for him to sign him. Instead, we sold him for 35 million. Do you know what I mean? And that the annoying thing to me is, why couldn't we have just put him on? Like, I get the money for Chalobah, okay, but that's only my theory. That's not confirmed by anyone. We could have just put him on loan. And then next season, you could have sold him for way more money or bring him back. But now you just sold him for very little money and still don't have anything out of it, really. So, because I know what you said, Mo, but we clearly want to move on Cucurella. We don't aim to have Cucurella on the bench, a 60 million bench player for the whole time. So the aim is still to move him on eventually. Whether that will happen or not is a different question, but maybe. And like Bertram said, Lewis Hall is a lot further in his development at 18 than Ian Martin was. So if I had to decide to keep one of them, it's not just I like and rate Martin, it would most certainly be Lewis Hall. So Ian Martin cannot, if we are clearly willing to get rid of Hall, Ian Martin cannot be a person that's in the way of Hall. That is, to me, contradicting. So, but yeah, at the end of the day, like I say, I'm not going to lose sleep over it. It is what it is. I hope he does well in a way, but also not too well. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I wish him the best because, you know, he's done nothing wrong. But yeah, I think Chelsea have treated him not well, and I also think Chelsea have treated the situation quite badly as well. But it is what it is. A few more pieces of transfer news before we get into focusing on tomorrow's game between Chelsea and what tweets am I looking at? West Ham, of course. Information from Fabrizio Romano. Obviously, we lost out on Michael Olise. Yes, we're interested in Bradley Barcola from Lyon. Apparently, there's also the Cherki links, but they've kind of been fan-created links for the last month and a half. But Manchester City, who were thought, or I thought at least, were pretty much done with signing Jeremy Doku, another Belgian, already. Apparently, Man City suspect there could be another club in the race for Doku. They don't want a bidding war. Some source suspects it is Chelsea, but let's see. At the moment, it's just a rumor. We know the Olise deal collapsed. Let's see if Chelsea really decide for Doku. Now, would I have preferred Olise to Doku? By what we need and lack in the squad? Yes. But is Doku still good? Yes. Would I prefer Doku to maybe Barcola? Probably yes. But like I say, at the moment, it's only a rumor, so I'm not going to get hung up on it too much or for too long. But just to quickly get your thoughts, Bertram, do you know much about Doku? Would you like us to sign him?
I think he's a very suitable option. I watched the stream you did with your expert, which I thought was very good. I think Doku has a very interesting skill set. I think he'd definitely be a player to get us off our seats, or at least the crowd at Stamford Bridge. Yeah. I've been impressed with him ever since the game he played against Italy when he came on in the Euros, and he was very good at a very young age. Maybe he was, how old was he now? Is he 19 or is he 21? And there was 19 then, or. It would almost be weird if it would almost be weird if we signed a player in their 20s. It almost seems old for
21,
him. Yeah, so he's 21. I think I would have preferred Michael Olise. I think also, the fact that we'd almost signed him, I'd talk myself up to him being a good player. And I have a good friend who's a Crystal Palace fan who speaks. He's been bugging me the whole week, which is annoying, but it is what it is. I think personally, I would. If it was between him and Barcola, I would go for Doku. I think just what I've seen, he looks better. I haven't seen that much, granted, of Barcola, but in a sense, I'd almost want a player to have a better output. I think if we look at some of the others we're interested in, Kudus, for example, he showed he can score goals, and I think that's what we need. I think if we bring in Doku, it'd almost be a champagne version of Mudryk. Very fast, very skillful, granted, but hasn't shown the output that we'd almost want. But I think if it was between the two players, I'd almost want us to get Doku in that sense. But I think definitely a good player. I just think what our team needs now is not a player like, Madueke. I think they're very similar, very skillful, very fast wingers. I'd almost want someone like a Kudus who can play on the right, but has that output, because that's what we need.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with Azad's comment as well. I would go for Kudus as well. Now, obviously, seemingly Ajax are charging more for Kudus than they did when Brighton were close to getting him until Kudus himself wanted a release clause and Brighton didn't want to give it to him. The only problem is when Jackson is most certainly going to be unavailable for the AFCON, Kudus will also be at the AFCON. So the main point when Jackson, unless an injury is picked up, will be unavailable, Kudus would also be unavailable. I don't know if that is the one or the only stumbling block for Chelsea not chasing him more, but it's the only one that I can explain to myself, because I don't think Kudus is that expensive for what he's shown so far. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind it too much. Just quickly, Mo, your thoughts? Jeremy Doku, would you be interested? Would you not? What do you think?
Yeah, I can't lie. I'm a big fan. And he's a player that I've watched in the French league. And actually, I've even tweeted about if Man City get him, this is an exciting signing for them that can replace what they've lost in Mahrez, an explosive winger that can actually really take on any players and really attract a number of players to mark him, which I think suits what Man City are trying to do. But also, when you look at our team, I do think this is a profile that is going to cause a big competition to Raheem Sterling, because Raheem Sterling, in my opinion, that's kind of the thing that people used to look at him at He's someone that was explosive. He's someone that was good at taking on players and was very good at using his pace. Not necessarily the most skillful or technical with it. But with this player, the one thing I do really like about him is that he's very confident and he is very much positive when he plays a game. And that's something I really like. I do think his injury record is not the best to look at. Hence why I've always kind of had that hesitation with him as a player. I don't know if that's just the way he's been managed at where he's at, or if it's just something that makes him injury prone. So hence why at Chelsea Football Club, I'll be very honest, anyone with an injury record, I've got two thoughts about it before I even look at their skill set, because I'm like, we cannot afford injuries. That's what we're running away from in the first place. But otherwise, I do rate him and I do think he's a very good player. The fact that we're being linked with him, I feel like it's a bit more like a lazy,
I'm not even sure if we are actually linked with him. Fabrizio even said it. No. It might not even be us.
Yeah. But the fact that obviously when they're saying that, there's a secret team that's also in touch for the player, and it's us that's being named straight away, I feel like it's just because of what kind of window we're having.
Yeah, because he link us with a lot of players. Trying to buy. Yeah,
exactly. Just to add the point about Kudus, that's the one thing I was going to say with Kudus. It's a great point to bring up about how versatile of a player he is, but he also goes to the African Nations Cup, and that basically ruins our plans in terms of availability right now. If Nkunku was still fit and we had Kudus on top of that, then I'd be not even hesitant. I'd be like, that's a play that you go sign. He's versatile, can play in multiple positions, and he's definitely a great backup. But also, whilst he's away, we can still use Nkunku. So right now, at this moment in time, what we should be prioritizing is a play that can actually play right now. I don't know who that player is. It's definitely not Brennan Johnson. I'll tell you that, because that's a link that I was not happy to see.
No. And I also watched some of that game yesterday, and he was dreadful.
Yeah, not for my cup of tea, man. Gibbs White, I've understood in it, but even he doesn't play that position. He
costs so much money. He's not good enough for that money either.
So, yeah. So
yeah, it's a difficult one.
We will have to look outside the Prem, because otherwise the value for money we'd be getting, other than Elise, because he had the release clause. I think
that's why I don't understand. Like, why are we idiots again and doing everything wrong? We could have just signed it, but no, we have to mess it up again.
But he does look like a hostage. We should send, a SEAL team in to get him out. I've never seen someone look that depressed in an announcement video.
That is true. I mean, it is obviously what I don't like about it is apparently Palace's kind of angle for this, like potentially forcing a tribunal against us for how we approached Olise, was the fact that we found out about his release clause. But I think the problem here is the FIFA rulings that these release clauses can be hidden. Like, what do you mean you don't like that we found out about release clause? You put a release clause in his contract. You can't just hide it.
Wait, they're allowed to hide it, or they're not allowed to hide it?
No, well, they are in a way. We apparently approached them, wanted to know about his injury and whatever else. They didn't tell us nothing. And then now they apparently are annoyed that we found out about the release clause and then activated it because they didn't want anyone to know about the release clause. Because obviously, any Warhol would have tried to sign him for 35 million because it's clearly worth a lot more than that. So I'm like, don't put, like, the problem here is that clubs think they are allowed, they are allowed in theory, but they shouldn't be allowed to hide release clauses. That is stupid.
Well, what's the point of it then?
Exactly.
I'm so confused.
That's why the player side told us about it. But then obviously Palace's argument was, well, then clearly you tapped him out because we didn't tell you about it. So how did you know? So, yeah, who knows? And obviously now the new contract, they are still aware he will leave, maybe even in January, the latest next summer. Now he just has a higher release clause. But yeah, we'll see. We have also been linked by Sky, and to be fair, they have been, especially Seth has been quite good. Or Sheth, not sure how to pronounce it. Quite good this summer in terms of our transfer news. But one source tells Sky Sports News Chelsea have a real interest in signing Florian Balogun. I'm not sure how his name is actually pronounced. I'm going to call him Balogun. But yeah, obviously, Arsenal player was on loan in Ligue 1 last season, scored, 21 goals, but 8 of them were penalties. I don't know. And I want to bring up something straight away along with that. What I found so weird. Oh, no, that was the wrong one. What I found so weird about this is because it already seems like the owners or the directors are not doing what the manager wants. Because how can, on the very same day, the Pochettino in a press conference says, we're looking at options for attackers in the market, but we also don't want to stop the evolution of Broja because they believe in him. And then 5 hours later, we are linked to a young striker. I mean, how more contradicting do you want to be? Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if the rumor is there for horse crap, or what's more likely is the directors, they want just all the young players in the world, even if Poch doesn't. That's what I think is more likely. But yeah, I like this from Poch. Less so buzzing about the links to Balogun. I'm not saying he's bad. He clearly had a good season in Ligue 1, did well, scoring 21 goals. Like I say, even if 8 of them or so were penalties. There was a lot of talk about like how much did he underperform his XG by? Then people were having a go at Pies for saying because he underperformed his XG, he doesn't want him. People saying you don't understand stats. Who the flip knows what's happening with that? While he's now going to Lens anyway. So that's out the window, but he's also going to, I know they're in the Champions League, but he's still going to Lens. So is he that good if he's going to Lens? Otherwise, wouldn't he be going to someone better? I don't know. But yeah, thoughts on this one? I'll start with you on this time, Mo. What do you think we need to, because I think we do need to bring a striker in, but I think we needed to bring a Giroud type striker in, who's a bit older, a bit of a different profile to Jackson, not another young one. We have the young one in Jackson and Broja. We don't need another young one. That is not used to anyone, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, bro. For me, it's just very confusing because when you really think about it, we loaned out, and I know you're not a fan of him, but we loaned out Datro Fofana. And I'm like, okay, so we loaned him out for what reason? To go improve him as a player. We have Broja on the books already, and we have Jackson. If you're going to do anything, I would understand a more experienced player that we can use for a year or two before we bring those guys in up to scratch. But I don't understand going after signings like this. Someone said it in here. I don't want to be giving Arsenal back the money that they paid Havertz for. And I absolutely agree with that statement as well. This player looks like he's a player that is very, very good based on what he did last season, but not good enough, in my opinion, to say that Chelsea need to go after this player. I think what we've done so far is, if we're saying that Broja is someone that we believe in, we need to actually do exactly what we're saying, which is give him the backing that he deserves and give him the chance to actually perform. And I do think at the moment, because of the injuries, because he's also returning from an injury, the club is just in a panic mode where they think they have to do things. But you can clearly tell we seem very unsure about this one. So for me, when we're this unsure and this a bit panicky about things and not assured like we were with Caicedo, for example, personally, for me, I say don't do any business on this front. It sounds crazy to say, especially when you think about the situation, but why waste money? Because in my opinion, next year, we're going to be in a better position to at least make a better and more healthier decision. If we get back into the Champions League, if Datro obviously kicks on and does really well at Union Berlin, maybe he is a player that you sell, or maybe he is a player that you can bring into the fold. All of these things need to be considered. I just don't think we need to rush this decision. That's how I really feel about it right now.
Yeah, no, I couldn't really agree more. Bertram, your thoughts, Balogun, but also, like I say, they're kind of contradicting that rumor, kind of contradicting what Pochettino literally said about Broja, because those two certainly do contradict each other, that rumor and that statement. So what do you think?
I think we should not sign Balogun. I believe in Datro Fofana. I believe, in response to that, I think our scouting team has proved to be very good, very talented. Even though he didn't get much playing time last season, we saw him against Fulham. I thought he was good. We've seen him in the friendlies. He looks to have been good. The big Union Twitter accounts have been praising him, so I can't wait to see his debut tomorrow. I think it would be a mistake to sign Balogun, and I think it would be a mistake because, first of all, we have two strikers. One might be injured, but we have two.
And secondly, he's close to being back as well. It's not like
he is close to being back. And the thing I don't get about it is he's very similar profile. I know we have, almost a fetish to sign young players. And I can understand that, if they're good players, Caicedo, Lavia, we almost don't mention their age because they're very good. Caicedo, he was 21. I didn't know, but it's very clear that I knew Lavia was 19. So I think, as you said, it doesn't really make sense. Furthermore, we have a striker on loan who I believe is going to be very good. We have Jackson, who, at least for the next couple of months, is going to be able to play. I think we have one game a week. He needs to develop. Sure, sometimes he might need to be subbed out. Someone will have to fill in. I think we have, once Broja comes back, we have two to be able to rotate with. I think this season should be fine. And I think a striker is not really where we need to, spend our money. I think the thing about Olise was he was a goal scorer, but he primarily played from the right, was also able to come in at 10. So this doesn't make sense, for me in that sense. I don't think we need a striker. I don't think we need to overpay for a striker. And I think, dealing with Arsenal is something I really can't be asked about. And he can't get in the team. Plus, we're going to have the American Twitter accounts back. And while it is very entertaining, I don't think it's something we do as well. So personally, I think give the strikers we have now the chance. We don't really need one. We're not playing Champions League. We have one game a week. And just wait and see how Datro performs. Just wait and see. At least, it's the Bundesliga. Timo Werner was a top scorer there. He's going to get some goals, going to get some confidence. At least we're going to sell him on, but give him the chance.
Yeah, I hear that to some extent. I mean, the whole not needing a striker is obviously, until Nkunku, I would have agreed with that, even though he's not an out-and-out striker, could fill in there if ever necessary. But obviously now, if either Breuer gets injured again or Jackson gets injured, then we are in a bit of a pickle in the striker situation, because whoever the fit striker is can't play every single game. Like, yeah, we only have one game a week, but not in reality, though, because we will hopefully have a few good cup runs, so that will give us some midweek games.
But then Brozier would be
fine. But if you only have one striker at the club, it's an issue. Now, I know we have Mason Burstow, but I mean, he didn't look great in that preseason game that I watched him. I wasn't exactly blown away, I won't lie. But yeah, like I say, in an ideal world, it would be an experienced striker who's happy to be back up, like Giroud was when we initially signed him from Arsenal. That's the type of player we'd need. But I'm not sure if they exist. Someone, even though I only today realized that Mitrovic, who today's got the here we go to Saudi Arabia, but I didn't realize he was only 28. I thought he was been 28 for about 5 years. I thought he was like 31, 32 now. But turns out he's 28. I'm baffled by that. I still can't believe it.
He broke into the scene when he was very young in it. That's why. So you just feel like he's been around for so goddamn long in it.
But even I just think he looks old. Like, he doesn't look like he's 28, does he?
Football can make you look rough, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what happens when you're from Serbia. No, I'm joking. But yeah, let's talk about tomorrow. A couple of things before we get into the actual team that we should discuss. First of all, Pochettino says he can't yet confirm if Lavia or Caicedo will play on Sunday. He will make a decision tomorrow. That is today, because the press conference was Friday, based on an assessment of where they are at. I'm personally I'm hoping Caicedo will start, because he's basically had the week of training with us. While Lavia, I'm expecting to be on the bench. First of all, from a system perspective, but also from, we literally only announced him on Friday. So I very much doubt he's going to be ready to start on Sunday. That's my perspective. And we got some updates, and I'm sure all of you guys know by now, but obviously we need to discuss it quickly on here. How long Reece James is out for. Now, Nathan Gissing says just over a month. Pochettino said a few weeks, which it could be about the same. A few weeks could be anything up from 3 weeks to 5-6 weeks, I guess. But anything over a month. The one positive is what Pice looked up in terms of if he missed a month, what games would he miss? Obviously, West Ham tomorrow, Luton, Wimbledon, Forest, and maybe Bournemouth. That wouldn't be too bad. He could most certainly be missing more important and more difficult games. That is very, very true. But I think let's just get into talking about tomorrow. And I think the first question we need to answer ourselves is what formation. I'm not even sure if I want to do predicted or our own. I would still like to do our own, but we talk about what we expect Poch to do at the same time. But what formation would you like to play tomorrow? And I'll start with you, Mo, because obviously last week we did officially, according to Poch, at least off the ball, play a 4-2-3-1, but the left back was Colwill and Ben Chilwell was the winger. Now, against Liverpool, because obviously Trent, their right back, pushes into midfield, and then Chilwell could kind of be somewhere here or here. I understand it, maybe, but also not really, I'll be honest. Can we please not play Chilwell at left wing again and actually play Mudryk, for the love of God? But yeah, I would stick to a 4-2-3-1 personally. Would you go for a 4-2-3-1 as well, Mo? Or would you like to see a 4-3-3, even if... What? No, he doesn't. He's injured. But anyway. Or would you like to force a 4-3-3 and include Lavia already? I mean, or play a 4-3-3 and have obviously Enzo and Gallagher as the 8 with Caicedo as the 6. Obviously also an option.
And I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think 4-2-3-1 is definitely the right way to go on this one. I think the 3 at the back, when the lineup was revealed last week, I was like, this actually makes sense based on what we have available to us. And hence why when everybody was having a meltdown about the lineup, I was like, actually, no, this logically makes sense.
But
now
then you figured out Chilwell was playing left wing.
I mean, I'll be honest. I tend to not look at the starting lineup much more than I do like what happens during different phases of play. And honestly, when I could tell that Colwill was pretty much playing as a left back, I said, okay, I'm all right. I don't have to rely on Chilwell to defend.
I get that, but then don't play Chilwell. Like, it's okay if you want to somehow put this centre-back, left-back situation like City do, or like Brighton do on the right-hand side. Fair enough, do that if you need it, if you need to. But don't play a left-back on the wing then. Like, you're telling us we're going to be attacking and trying to win every game and trying to win the fucking league, and you're playing a left-back on the wing. I'm not... Like, Chile's good and everything, but like...
I think it was supposed to help us.
The best game he's played for us was fucking against Liverpool, man. But anyway,
it was supposed to just give us a bit more flexibility. I think the idea from what it looks like was that depending on what Liverpool forced us to do, if they forced us to go into a back five, then we had the option to do that on the pitch. If obviously that's not the case in that scenario, you could see why eventually we made the changes that we did. But it felt like the game was ours for the taking after we kind of weathered the storm in that first 15-20 minutes. Especially when that second goal was disallowed, we felt like a better team for it. And honestly, it came as a shock to me when we even conceded the first goal, because I was like, oh, we seem to be starting to get grips of the game. And then suddenly, bam, we're 1-0 down. Before you know it, we're 2-0 down. I'm like, what the hell's going on? I've never been more glad to see VAR interrupt something and say, nope, it's offside. But I look at this setup situation, and honestly speaking, I understand people's obsession with the starting lineup in terms of the formation that we set up, but I do generally think this is the first time where I can confidently say we really need to start looking at how the formation actually transitions in different phases of play, and that will tell you what we're actually trying to do on the pitch, and that's much more of an accurate picture to judge the team's performance on. And personally, for me, I want to see this because I do feel like out of Lavia and Caicedo, one of them will start, and I actually agree with you, Lawrence. I think Caicedo will be the one to start.
Yeah, exactly. And just to touch on this before I let Bertram comment on the formation, as I said, we play Chile as a winger with the hope to neutralise Trent. I get that, but we are Chelsea Football Club and we were at home. The way to not neutralise but exploit Trent Alexander-Arnold is to put Mudryk on him. Not to put Chile there to cover for Trent. No, it's to put Mudryk there so Trent is shitting himself and doesn't move into midfield because he's terrified of the space he's leaving for Mudryk. That's how you stop Trent. Not by putting Chile there and following him around like a man marker. I mean, I know who Poch is and I know the way he plays, and I know even though he tried to sell us in the media, trying to sell us with this attacking manager, Poch is not an out-and-out attacking manager. He's more like Tuchel and Jose in that sense, where it's like, we think about other things first. And I understand the thought, but I felt a bit too much Tuchel and Jose Mourinho in that decision. I'm like, just put Mudryk there, and Trent won't go anywhere in midfield because he will be terrified of getting burned all game long. That's what you needed to do, in my opinion. But I'm not the manager, and in the end, it worked out all right. But did it? Because could we have won? Because I think we could have won if we just exploited Trent more. Because we put Chile next to Trent. Chile's not a winger. Chile never beat Trent in a one-on-one all game long, not once. So how can you tell me it worked? But anyway, Bertram. 4-2-3-1, would you go with that as well?
I think my thoughts around this is the way we played against Liverpool was in a sense to neutralize them, even though you'd have wanted us to, come out, dominate them, even though, look past how they play and, play our way and win. I think Poch can be a very pragmatic manager at times, maybe until he finds out what this team is really capable of. So I think that game, we relied much on, getting the ball into the midfield and then quickly spreading it out to our wingers, because even though Robertson and, Trent Alexander-Arnold are known to be very good offensively, defensively they lack. So in a sense, we played a lot through the wings there. I think tomorrow, West Ham, they play a 4-2-3-1. So I think we could perhaps use a different formation to try and counter what they're good at and in a sense exploit it that way. So I think perhaps matching up to them with a 4-2-3-1 as well could be a move. I think that's probably what I would do as well. But I think it's maybe a variation of the 4-2-3-1 and a 4-3-3, depending on the midfielders we want to play. And regarding Poch's comments, I think it's very, Poch-like. It would be very dumb of him to go out and say, one of them will start, giving them that advantage. I think, his whole thing is, I don't care how much you cost. If you play well in training, you will start, or you'll get the chance. If you don't play well, no matter who you are, you're not going to play. So I think.
Also, let's be honest, as much as Gallagher had a good game last week, Poch doesn't want to play Gallagher as the main six all the time.
No. We'll get onto it as well, but I think Gallagher could be decent for this game if we want to counter them in a sense, because I think the way his energy, his doggedness in midfield, I think tomorrow there'd be a lot of duels in the midfield area, so I think that could be something. But I think we are going to see Caicedo start. Touching with the fact that he seems to fit in well. He knows a lot of the players. He speaks Spanish. Potts speaks Spanish.
And as you said, as well, thankfully
he does. And Lavia, he's also very young. Maybe he doesn't have that clear of a role as we talked about. We all knew that Enzo and Caicedo, they're going to be speaking Spanish next to each other. It's going to fit in seamlessly. Lavia might be different, but he's going to play in. So I think for me, formation wise, I'd go with the 4-2-3-1. I think the combination of our midfield is going to be interesting. I think it's the Enzo, Caicedo, and maybe Gallagher further up. I think it's going to be interesting. So I'd go with this formation.
There you go. Obviously, Sanchez will be in goal because we don't have another goalie right now. But let's talk about the centre-backs, because obviously last week we had Colwill, Thiago Silva, but we also had Disasi. Now, really, Colwill was the left-back and Thiago Silva and Disasi were the centre-backs. I guess maybe we should do the back four in one go rather than just the centre-backs, because there might be centre-backs and full-back here. I'll let you go first, Bertram. How would you feel with the centre-backs? Would you do another... Well, the back four, sorry. Would you do another centre-back at full-back situation? Or would you, against Liverpool, we do that, but against West Ham, it's a different animal. We need to now also show who we are and what we do, and also focus on how we play and try to be attacking ourselves rather than, mess around with too many centre-backs.
I think it's difficult because I think with the managers we've had in the past, it's always been very easy to guess the team we've had. Sarri, he religiously played the 4-3-3. That we had the period when he always subbed Jorginho and Kovacic. You could almost bet on it. I think it's going to be very interesting.
But yeah.
Was it? Oh, Kovacic. Was it? Yeah, perhaps.
Yeah. Jorginho was always the regist in it, and then it was either Barkley or Kovacic was the 8, and then whoever didn't play came on for the other after 70 minutes every game.
Yeah, it was annoying. I think a thing we could do tomorrow, seeing as we're probably going to start with Gusto, let's be honest. I think he's going to be the right back.
Yeah. It could be Disasi, theoretically.
It could be Disasi. I think...
do the opposite, what we did with Colwill on this side last week.
Exactly. I personally...
with the centre-back here.
I think West Ham, given the fact that we have Bowen up against... It's going to be our left back then. I could see him play Colwill there. And I could see him play Colwill and then, Silva and Disasi centrally. Both, to help us build out. We also have the Disasi status, which it's very...
What would you like us to play, though?
It's difficult. I want Colwill to play, and I want Thiago Silva to play. And it would be tough to drop Disasi. I think a combination of having definitely Thiago Silva, and I think Gusto is better defensively than Chilwell, so I'd start him. I would play Disasi, left center back.
Stick to Disasi, okay.
I would stick to Disasi, and I would play Levi Colwill left back, both because West Ham's most dangerous player is their right winger, so Colwill will be able to tag with him. And
am I expecting you to drop Chilwell now, or are you playing Chilwell on the wing again?
I'm dropping Chilwell.
Okay, so neither our captain nor our vice captain is playing. Brilliant.
Oh, that is an interesting point. Yeah, for me, I don't know. I've given up.
No, you go what you want to go with.
This is what I would go for. I would go for this. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll give it to Mo before I put my input in. Back four. Would you agree with this back four? Would you maybe put Disasi on the right and play Chilwell on the left and leave Gusto out, or would you just leave either Disasi or? Well, no one wants to leave Colwill out, do they? And no one wants to leave Thiago Silva out. So realistically, if one of the centre-backs is left out, it's probably Disasi, even though he scored last week. And just play Gusto and Chilwell as full-backs and have two actual centre-backs. How would you do it, Mo?
Yeah, and that last part that you said. So I'd say Colwill and Gusto as full-backs. Thiago Silva with Colwill is what would be in the middle of the centre-backs. I think Disasi did a phenomenal job. He grew into the game last week. He's done nothing wrong. I do think just because he's had the shortest stint with us at the moment, and I do feel like he's the one that's most likely going to be dropped to the bench to allow for us to have this change of formation and also allow an extra attacker to be there. And this is one of those games I also believe we shouldn't have to. My God, the cat came out of nowhere. And this is one of those games where I just don't feel like we need to adapt to West Ham. We need to enforce our ability on the game, and the way you do that is by putting your best players on the pitch that are going to cause the most danger. So that's what I would be expecting. That forward at the back, the two in front, I think, are very obvious choices. Basically, someone in the comment section has already picked out my team. That's going to be my team, and I think that's the most likely that's going to start.
Very interesting. Can I just and I'll come to mine. I will go with the same back four as Mo did, but my reasoning is a bit different. Now, I know we had Gallagher last week, but obviously we used then Colwill to essentially, this was Reece James. Reece James pushed up, and we essentially built in a three with Colwill, Thiago, and Disasi. That's what we did. But that was when we had Gallagher and Enzo. Now we have Enzo and Caicedo. Now, I'm sure we all agree that this should be Enzo and Caicedo. Correct. Whoever will be on the left, on the right, I don't know how that will be, but that doesn't really matter. But my logic is, then you can do that, and you can build in a three and use Caicedo for that, because you can't use Gallagher for it, but you can use Caicedo for it, and that takes away the necessity to do this whole centre-back at full-back and then build in a three from there. Correct. To me, it's now that you have two capable midfielders, you let one of the midfielders do the dropping-in job to build with your three, but let both of your full-backs push without costing you a winger on the pitch. That's why I would do it like this. To be my shout, my idea, that's why I play it like this, with that kind of background idea, because I think our fullbacks are all of our fullbacks, except Cucurella, are all much better going forward than defensively. So I personally hope and think it is always Poch's plan to not build with three. I mean, obviously last time it was Colwill, which then changes everything, like Pep does with Ake and Gallagher and whatever, Walker and whatever. But I would hope that the idea is let our actual fullbacks push up without taking one spot off the wingers, please. And then still you can build in a three by having one of the midfielders drop. And then as soon as you're out of the first phase of build-up, the midfielder obviously pushes back up again, obviously. That's why you have someone like Caicedo who has the legs to cover enough ground to drop in to build and then push back up once the ball is higher up the pitch. But that's how I would do it. Mo, I'm sure you agree. The double pivot has to be Enzo and Caicedo, right?
100%, man. I'd be upset if that's when I would have a meltdown. It's like, hey, man, we spent a lot of money on these two. It's time we get to see them to play together, man. And I think it'll be wonderful to witness as well, man. And I also think what you suggested in terms of obviously what it allows us from a formational point of view, just by having those two there, it allows that flexibility that we didn't have last week, and we had to obviously take risks with the way that we played. And I do think, although we grew into the game, I always imagined what would it be like when you have these two in midfield together, and I think that's what we're going to see tomorrow.
Exactly that. And I do already want you to include the number 10 in your midfield as well. You said you agreed with one of the chats. I assume that was Assad.
Yeah,
you put Gallagher.
Assad, yeah.
Would you go with Gallagher as well, or would you stick with
Look,
Chukwuemeka?
let me put it this way to you. If it's up to me, Chukwuemeka gets the start, right? That's if it's up to me.
Okay, but if I'm asking you your team, you're picking Chukwuemeka.
Yes, I would. I'm all about the long term, and I also feel like I look at profiles, and I feel like I like more of what Chukwuemeka is able to do on the ball. His finishing is still leaving a little bit to be desired, but I can
Gallagher
see
will
that
get more goals. I agree with that.
Which is where that my only difference is. But otherwise, honestly speaking, Conor Gallagher is probably going to be the guy that starts because of what he does off the ball, because of the fact that he's a pressing machine. But otherwise, I still will. If you ask me, I'm all about the long term. I would get much more money out of Chukwuemeka and over the long term than I can of Conor Gallagher, who's been linked with moves away all this time. That tells me a lot. But just because obviously Pochettino favors him, I just feel like it's going to be him. I can't even lie.
Yeah, there you go. It's I hear you. I personally don't even really mind, because I know it's a different position, but Gallagher did very well last week. So even if it's in a different position, I think he almost warrants keeping his place, but I don't think Chukwuemeka really did anything. Not that he was bad, but he just didn't really do anything. He was kind of invisible, I thought, for most of the game. So I wouldn't be against if it's Gallagher either, but I would agree. I would stick with Chukwuemeka. And that is another thing I want to touch on quickly. If we say we build in our three, we have the fullbacks push up, Caicedo drops deep, and then you can have Chukwuemeka drop into here, and then you still have your midfield two in that moment and essentially do the same, except that this one now isn't Chukwuemeka, but Mudryk, which is way better anyway, in my opinion. Yeah. So I think whether that's Chukwuemeka or Gallagher, doesn't really matter. The same thing can apply. I think this is still a better way to build than having a left back, because I mean, yeah, we can get used to it, obviously, but I just don't think our players are suited to not having a real out wide outlet, and I don't think the solution to it is playing a fullback and winger. I don't want that to be the solution to the team not being used to having a defensive outlet on each wing. I don't think that's the solution to it. So that's why I would do what I just explained here. But yeah,
I think also,
go on.
I think also people were very complimentary of Chilwell last week in terms of he was in the right places to obviously have good chances. But the way I kind of felt is there was definitely moments where I felt like he was predictable because Colwill would pass the ball to him and I already knew Chilwell was going to pass the ball back to him or Chilwell was going to pass the ball back to somebody else. He's not going to take on his man. I think with Mudryk, you have this opportunity now to have a bit more of dynamic play in terms of just how we attack as a team. And Colwill, in particular, for me, is a player that would benefit. Just imagine the balls he would be able to put behind just for Mudryk to take advantage of. And I also think you put Mudryk in the positions that Chilwell had the chances in last week. I think Mudryk at least puts one of those goals away. That's how I felt about it.
I don't disagree. Bertrand, I'll ask you. We've picked, obviously, Caicedo, Enzo, we're all in agreement on. Who would you pick as the 10? Would you stick with Chukwuemeka or would you put Gallagher up there?
I think Chukwuemeka definitely has room for improvement, but offensively, I think he's better than Gallagher. I think Gallagher might be able to surpass him in the fact that the way he was utilized at Palace and where he was good last week was those second balls, those drop balls when we play further up.
City 1-0 Newcastle, by the way.
City.
Yeah.
I think Gallagher might be able to win some of the second balls. We've also seen that he does have a goal scoring threat where he could he could come in and possess a threat. I think Chukwuemeka was decent against Liverpool. I think there is a talent there, but just the fact that Gallagher played so well, it's almost tough to drop him.
Yeah.
But I think he would understand. I think for me, it's much more nailed on the fact that I'd want Jackson playing. We'll get on to them later, but I'm not too bothered whether it is Chukwuemeka or Gallagher. I think the way we play will differentiate between the two of them. But I think I would love to see us try and utilize Gallagher a bit further forward because while he might not be the best on the ball, he's not going to be.
He's a goal threat.
Yeah, he's not going to be the best. The silky. He's not going to be David Silva, but he is going to be someone. Perhaps maybe I'm not comparing them in any way, but like a Yaya Toure in a sense where he has a shot on him. His late runs into the box make him dangerous. And he is, in Denmark, we have a term called chaos pilot, someone who just makes, a lot of chaos. And that's what he is. And if you put a lot of speed around him, Mudryk on the left, Madueke on the right, I think it could be very effective having him, come into the box late.
There you go. I mean, you kind of said it there already. Who would your winger and striker be? Because Mudryk and Jackson, I know I kind of set in stone already. I know you're going to say Madueke for here because he's just put it in a private chat. I just want to kind of ask that question, and then obviously you can still stick with your opinion. Do you think Madueke is ready to start? Because, mind you, he missed all of preseason injured. And I know he was on a bench last week, but he's kind of... Are you sure it's smart to start him straight? I personally, and I don't like Sterling, and I would rather he doesn't play. But I think it's better for Madueke if he, before starting, gets a sub appearance, personally. As much as I want him to start, without preseason and him being as injury prone as he is, not just with us now, this injury, but also beforehand when he was at PSV, is it smart to bring him straight in to start? I don't know. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I see your point, and I think it makes sense. My thinking behind it is, first of all, I think Sterling is, not very good. I don't think he deserves to start. He might given the fact that he could link up. He linked up well with Reece last week, but the experience as well. He is a good player, whether we like it or not, and whether he shows it or not. I think he is. We have seen over the last couple of years he is a good player. My thinking comes from the fact that when we saw Madueke last season, I thought he was good and I thought he was dangerous. I think he is going to have a period, whether we sub him on or whether we start him, and where he might need 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes. He might even need a game or two to, come to some sort of level. I think we might as well start with him now. That being said, of course, there is going to be some growing pains, which is why it would probably be smart to start with Sterling.
Yeah.
I think
my issue isn't with him being ready. My issue is more fitness. Like, is he going to be able to handle playing 60 minutes? That's more what I'm
if he has, the medical staff, if we even have it, if we have such a thing, the medical staff, if they give him the green light, I'd start him. If Pochettino sees, that he is able to start, I would start him, purely basing on how the two players perform. I'd start him. I would understand starting Sterling as well, but I would hope to see him maybe play a bit more centrally in a way, because I think he might be sometimes a bit isolated on the wing. Perhaps if Gusto helps him out, it might help. But if I had two players, full fitness, I would go with Madueke. I can understand starting Sterling, though.
Yeah, there you go. But who would you want me to put down, Madueke or Sterling? Madueke, I assume.
Yeah, I put Madueke. He won't start, but if I put Colwill left back as well. So I just put Madueke on.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think you might end up being right with that Colwill left back. I just don't want it to happen. Like, obviously, this comment from Robinson here says Disasi will start at right back position instead of Gusto, which will allow us to switch to a back three. More in build up, I assume. Disasi also gives us height needed in the game, but Colwill is also tall. But yeah, I agree with Jazza. Noni won't start, but might as well put him in, because even if he won't start, I want to make it clear that if possible, I don't want Sterling to start. But yeah,
Robinson pointed something important out as well, which, that now they have James Ward-Prowse. I put my house on him scoring tomorrow, at least assisting, on his debut. We all saw the comments. West Ham are also a very physical team.
Did he not debut last week?
Did he debut last week?
I don't know. No.
He didn't. I think he said he's been dreaming of scoring a free kick the whole week, and sure he's going to do it. But if you look,
we have Sanchez now. Everyone's telling me we're not going to concede long shots anymore. So
no, but also the fact that from corners they're very dangerous as well. Sanchez might go out and grab each cross, but James Ward-Prowse swinging in balls to Zuma. Souček, Zuma. Who else do they have? Aguerd. All these tall players. You could almost bet on the fact that they're dangerous there. So it would help. It would help to have a physical presence as well in Disasi.
I do hear that. I mean, from that POV, you could also argue then play Disasi instead of Silva, because he's obviously 4 inches taller. But would you want to drop Silva? Maybe not. But yeah, Mudryk on the left for me is an absolute set in stone. I know knowing Poch, knowing all of our managers, because they all seem to not start Mudryk, even though I want them to start Mudryk. He's probably not going to start again for some baffling reason. But yeah, this would be my front three. The same. Mo?
No Maatsen.
Front three. Would you pick Sterling over Madueke? Sorry, Bertram, say again.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I would. Jonas in the chat suggested Maatsen. We saw him playing preseason. I wouldn't have a problem with him playing. Cam, for example, giving him the shot.
You see, I see him either as a left or right. I think he's too one-footed to be in the middle, if that makes sense. Because he seems to only use his left foot. I'm like, if you're in the middle, then I don't know. But I hear what you're saying as well. I wouldn't mind him on the right necessarily, but obviously we've only seen it with Reece James. I don't know how that's going to go with Gusto. I don't know. But I think for the time being, realistically, we all know Sterling is going to start at right wing anyway. We all know it will. But we'll just go for Madueke for the time being. But Mo, would you go for Madueke too, pretending he's fully fit and everything? Or would you stick with Sterling?
Yeah, if it's up to me, I'm with you guys, man. I think Sterling's preseason already showed me that he didn't deserve to start the first game, let alone the second game. And it's weird, right? I was at the game, and after the game, obviously, you end up in discussions with fellow Chelsea fans. And there was Chelsea fans telling me he played well. And I said, my God, dude, did I watch a different game? Because for me, his decision-making was really pissing me off. He had 2 good moments in the whole game. But for the most part, I was like, yo, your decision making is horrible. I can't stand you. And you keep doing the wrong things on the pitch that is just causing transitions to happen. And I don't want to see that. I'll be honest, especially against a Moyes team, West Ham, who are known for transitions more often than not, but also set pieces and everything like that. I don't know, man. Like, Raheem Sterling, for me, has left a lot to be desired. And honestly, if these performances continue, I hope he gets benched. It's why I was very happy to hear Pochettino's comments. If your performances are not up to scratch, I understand that. I don't care how much you've been bought for, how much you're getting paid. You're gonna hold bench, and you're gonna have to be at your best. And I think Madueke is someone that
only when you have options, and if Madueke isn't to start, then
that's where I fear. Obviously, that means then that Raheem Sterling does get to start. Yeah. But I'm him,
the last week, maybe next week, we'll see Madueke start.
He needs to start He needs to start counting his blessings, because that's the only thing that's keeping him in that team right now. Because otherwise, I think if we had options, there's no way he starts.
Yeah, there you go. But I would be pretty happy with this team. I understand what everyone's saying with the counter-attacking, but That's what we just paid 115 million for Caicedo for. I expect him to help us stop those things, you know what I mean? And not be as vulnerable to those things. That's why we paid 115 million for him. If we're not less susceptible to counterattacks, having paid this much money for him, then why did we pay this much money for him? Do you know what I mean? Like, it has to bring something. Otherwise, we might as well have had Jorginho there if we're still kind of screwed on every counterattack. But yeah, it's going to be very, very interesting what Poch does today. Will Kobo be at left back again? Will Disasi be at right back potentially? Will he do what we have on screen now? Will it be a 4-3-3? Will it be a 4-2-3-1? Who knows? When would it be on the bench again? Will Chilwell be on the wing again? Who the flip knows? But one last thing we need is a score prediction for tomorrow. And I'll start with you, Mo. What are you expecting?
So I said 2-1 last week. Ended up being 1-1. Yeah. West Ham, we're gonna have to beat you. So I don't give a damn. I'm gonna say 3-1 Chelsea.
All right, I like it.
I'm going to be confident on this one. I have a good feeling. I feel like last week, especially the way we started the season, I feel very confident. I feel like the vibe is really good. I feel like the manager's in the right mindset for it. And I also feel like West Ham is still not a stable club. I think they've lost a big play in Declan Rice. And I also feel like the only play that I'm actually worried about is Bowen and Ward-Prowse and set pieces. So for that reason, I'm being generous. I'm giving them 1 goal. But I also think we're going to be able to score 3 goals.
Fair play. Bertram, what about you?
Tomorrow is going to be the most boring 2-0 win you'll ever see. We're gonna not seem as convincing as we were last week. We might even get rattled a bit to start with. But I think Jackson will get his first goal tomorrow. And a centre back, or a defender at least, is going to score. And you can hold me up to that. We're going to win 2-0. It's going to be, fine, okay, fair enough. Decent.
Fair dues. See, I was also going to go 2-0 actually. Now I'm tempted to kind of change it just to be interesting, but I won't because they don't want to change it to 2-1. I'm not going to help you boys jinx it and say that James Ward-Prowse is somehow going to cause a goal because absolutely no chance. What do we have a 6'6" goalkeeper for? I want benefits, please, for the love of God. And also, I'm not accepting counter-attacking goals anymore. We have Caicedo now. Let's be honest, I accept us not scoring every chance. We still have some dodgy attackers here, but we spend 150 million a DM, play like it, and I have a 6'6" goalkeeper. I'm not expecting free kicks anymore. I mean, obviously, with deliveries and headers, everything can happen. I'm very aware, but I'm not trying to talk it into existence. So I'm agree with the 2-0. Obviously, a 3-0 mix of all of our predictions would be even better. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. But ladies and gentlemen, I think it's about time we wrap this one up. Even though it's about half time for the City game, so maybe it would have been smart to go for 15 minutes longer. But hey, here we are. Ladies and gentlemen, please do check out both Bertram and Mo in the description. Both of their Twitters are down there. You can even see Mo's on screen right now. Please, of course, subscribe if you haven't already. That would be massively appreciated. Hit that like button on your way out. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. Up to Chelsea, up to onwards, and we'll see you next time.